Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of Halftime on the Hudson. I am your brand new host, Jimmy, alongside with a familiar face but in a different role, Mr. President Rob DeFelice. All right, we're going to just jump right into it. So we're about 3 days out from the Super Bowl happening. The Kansas City Chiefs did defeat the Philadelphia Eagles 38-35. Rob, I just want to get some of your reactions from the game.
Yeah, definitely. It was, first of all, an exciting game to watch. A little bit of a questionable ending. We'll get to that in a little bit. First and foremost, Jalen Hurts played absolutely out of his mind, throwing 304 yards, 4 total touchdowns, 70 yards with his legs, an all-time quarterback performance in the Super Bowl, but unfortunately could not get it done in the end. I think Patty Mahomes was rather underwhelming, didn't even throw for 200 yards in the game, which for Mahomes is one of his worst performances. Like, that's not what you expect from a guy like that. But that, is credit to the Eagles defense. And I mean, the call, right? The call at the end, everyone was blowing up about it. Here's my thing with the call. Was it by definition a hold? Yes. But I feel as though throughout the season, they allowed far more contact to go on uncalled. So I think it's unclear where the precedent is set of how much holding is required to actually throw that flag. Did that in the end cost them the game? I don't think so. I think, if they were up by 30 points, a holding call wouldn't have mattered. So I don't think that the holding call is what cost them the game. I think it was a little questionable, could have gone either way, but an interesting way for the game to come to an end. What do you think about that?
I mean, yeah, I'm under the opinion that was a rather soft call. I will admit it was a hold, but especially with how the game was being played out, I believe there was 6 total penalties called. That reffing staff had the most penalties called the entire game, and they were letting everything go. And even earlier in that drive, I believe James Bradbury shoved Juju to the ground and got nothing. So I mean, to call that. It was a 3rd and long. If they made the stop, it could have been a 4th and long, could have held them to a field goal. Eagles could have drive down and won. But I do want to say that it was kind of the Eagles' fault for getting into that position in the first place. So, and I mean, Bradbury did admit to it as well. But again, especially with how the game was panning out, I do believe that you just let the game play out. You see what happens, and maybe potentially we see the Eagles hosting up the Lombardi instead of the Chiefs.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to touch upon too the MVP award. I understand that the MVP is, much like the regular season MVP, is a quarterback-dominant award, but with as underwhelming of a performance that Patty Mahomes had, I don't think he deserved that award. In my opinion, and I'll stand by this hot take, I think it should have been Kadarius Toney that gets that MVP award. Without that punt return, they don't win that game. So I think that if anyone is to get that award for being the most valuable player of that game, it has to be Kadarius Toney. What about you?
I mean, yeah, by definition, you would have to expect the most valuable player to the award would have to go to the most valuable player. And I do believe Kadarius Toney at least makes a good argument for it. He had that punt return, which set them up in great field position to overtake the game. He had that touchdown on that long-ass drive. I mean, Kadarius Toney played his heart out, and I want to throw a little shout-out to my good friend Zach here. It definitely was a knife in the heart of all Giants fans. But I do believe that Kadarius Toney at least made a valid argument to get that award. Patrick Mahomes didn't play nearly as good football as he usually did. I believe he was averaging 308 passing yards for the entire season. Under 200 yards, yeah, he had 3 touchdowns, but they were all red zone touchdowns too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a quarterback-based award, and I understand why they did give it to Patrick Mahomes, but still, I do believe that Toney at least had a good argument to get it.
Yeah, and I honestly, I'm just mad that we had to see Jackson Mahomes hitting the
don't even get me started on that.
Right as his brother's lifting up the trophy, you see him in the
He's
background.
22, come on.
Yeah. Corvette. It's come on now. That was the most disappointing thing about that. But now we're going to transition. Now that the season is over, we got the draft coming up, the combine, all the excitement of the offseason. But let's get into some way too early next year predictions for division winners. We're going to take things division by division, starting with the AFC North. I have the Bengals still taking this division, but as a close second, the Steelers. I see Kenny Pickett coming in with a Trevor Lawrence-type second year. Not quite Trevor Lawrence, but a Trevor Lawrence-type second year where they're going to keep things close. They're going to keep things competitive for the Bengals. I see the Ravens, on a decline. Lamar's future in Baltimore is uncertain, but it's still the Bengals division until proven otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I have the Bengals winning this division as well. I mean, the Ravens are on a heavy decline after losing their offensive coordinator. They did sign Georgia's offensive coordinator as well, but Lamar's future is up in the air. I actually will disagree with you on the Steelers being second. I believe that the Browns will at least make a jump now that Deshaun Watson has enough time with that offense, and I do believe that they're going to bring in some other pieces. That's just me. Your Steelers argument for second place, I do understand. Kenny Pickett could show out just like Trevor Lawrence did in his second year, but I guess we'll just have to see. But it's definitely still the Bengals' division to lose.
And now moving into the AFC South, I believe as long as Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson are down in Jacksonville, the AFC South runs through Duval. They had an absolutely hot end of the season. Aside from the awful first half of the playoff game against the Chargers, Trevor Lawrence is looking like a top 5 quarterback in the league. And with how well he's been doing, with how well he fits into that system of that offense, that division is theirs. Tennessee's always going to keep it interesting for them, but I think that's Jacksonville's division for the future moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree as well. I mean, like, and especially now that they're getting Calvin Ridley off a suspension as well, so that offense just gets another bolster as well. And I mean, Tennessee's on the decline. Like, we don't know what's going to happen with Ryan Tannehill and his declining contract. Derrick Henry, there's his future's up in the air. In Indianapolis and Houston, we can just safely write them off. I don't think they're going to be making any noise in that division, and I do have to agree. It's Jacksonville's division for sure.
Definitely. Now moving into the AFC East, I got a little bit of a hot take here. Right? I think the Bills are on a little bit of a decline. I think they're consistent in being slightly above mediocre, but I think time and time again they show that they aren't enough to get it done all the way. Now, a team that is on the rapid incline, I love the Dolphins in this division. I think Mike McDaniel, I, for some reason, can't imagine why that there were even questions about his job security as a head coach. I think in a season where you have Tua, hopefully, for the entire season, and he's not out every other week with a concussion because of their fantastic medical staff, that's a team that can do very, very well together. You have an explosive offense with Tyreek Hill, who put up ungodly numbers this season. You have Jalen Waddle, who having him as your number 2 receiver isn't a bad option. Mike Gesicki, in my opinion, is a little underrated. I think he's a great tight end. So I think the Dolphins can do enough, as long as Tua stays healthy, to win this division next year. Yeah,
I don't understand why Mike McDaniel had a lot of questions about his job security. And I mean, now they're bringing in even more help on that coaching staff. They're bringing Vic Fangio, who is a great defensive mind. That's definitely going to help the Dolphins defense. I do believe that the Dolphins are going to shock the AFC East and upset the Bills. The Bills are still going to make the playoffs, but I do believe that the Dolphins are going to come in and make some noise. I mean, like Tyreek Hill, he had his best statistical season this year. I mean, he's been fantastic with the Chiefs. And then you have Jalen Waddle, who in his own right could absolutely be a wide receiver 1 as well. And Mike Gesicki, I do believe, is in that upper echelon of tight ends as well. I believe he's a top 10 tight end. He's very underrated, does a lot for that team. So, yeah, I do believe that the Dolphins could shock the world here.
Definitely. And now moving into the AFC West, as much as it pains me to say it, I think until proven otherwise, this is still Kansas City's division. I think Denver, my team, they're still they're up there. I think Sean Payton can turn things around for Russell Wilson. I think he can turn things around for this entire Broncos offense. They had a lot of injury trouble this year. They lost Garrett Bowles early in the season, one of the best offensive linemen in the game right now. Once they have a healthy roster that's now coached by Sean Payton, who is a competent head coach, I think they're going to be able to be very successful, but still not able to oust Kansas City, and Kansas City will still have a hold of that division. Maybe the Broncos get a wild card. The Raiders, losing Derek Carr, they're going to be on a decline. I don't see them doing much this year. Sorry, Connor Kirkpat, it's not going to happen. They're done. And, I mean, the Chargers are always a threatening team, but they always seem to choke in big-time situations. So maybe they get a wild card as well, but we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs are top dog in the NFL. Like, it pains me to say it. I'm not the biggest Chief fan. I'm not the biggest Patrick Mahomes fan, but you can't hate greatness here. He is definitely on the path of becoming one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever touch a football. I mean, the AFC West has been locked up for, 5 years now that they won, 5 or even 7 with Alex Smith as well. But, the Chiefs, it's their division to lose by far. I just don't think any of the other teams in that division are going to, creep close to them.
Definitely. Now hopping over to the NFC, we start in the North, and I'm pretty excited about the North this year. I think the Samurai Master in Jamal Williams really turned things around, had an unbelievable year for Detroit this year, and I think he continues on with that steam, and I think this is the Lions division. The Packers are falling. Aaron Rodgers, is sitting in a dark closet somewhere right now, thinking about God knows what, doing God knows what while he's in there, Who knows what he's up to, but getting ready to play football is not on that list. Who knows if he's going to be back or if he's going to be in a Packers uniform? We don't know. So the Packers are out of that conversation. The Vikings, I think this season was a fluke that's chopped up to the fact that they had a very easy schedule. Kirk Cousins is not that guy. He'll never be that guy. They showed that once they actually stood in the face of competition that they're not going to be able to get it done. And the Bears are still at least 3 seasons away from being competitive, so I don't see them doing much either.
Yeah, I'm glad you're giving the Lions some love because I do believe that they're going to take the NFC North as well. And I want to correct you here. Jamal Williams is the swag Kage. Just to be safe. But I mean, like, I love that offense. That offense was super high-powered the entire season. Yeah, the defense was a little suspect, but I do believe that under Dan Campbell and that defensive coaching staff, I do believe that they can make a turnaround. That division is really, like, wide open right now. Like, maybe the Vikings have, another season like they did this year. But again, I mean, what's to say? But I do believe that the Lions could make a lot of noise and potentially run away with that division.
Absolutely. Now we move to the NFC South, arguably the new NFC East. Because the NFC East used to be the laughingstock of the NFL, but this year proved that the NFC East was the division to beat, which is crazy, besides the Commanders. But this is a very, very weak division. Tom Brady retiring, we think. That puts the Bucs into absolute shambles. There's nothing good about that team now that he's gone. So they're on the decline. I think the Panthers have a lot of good pieces, and if you get a somewhat decent quarterback in there, which there are plenty on the market going into this offseason, whether it be in the draft or free agency, find a halfway decent quarterback, put him into that position. I see the Panthers winning this very weak division.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree as well. I feel like it's the Panthers' division to lose here. I believe that the Panthers, it's their division to lose. I mean, their offense is already good. If you are able to slot in a decent quarterback, I believe that they're going to be able to at least light up this division, really take it. And then that defense as well, it's not that bad. Like, a lot of people kind of write it off, but it's not that bad. So I do believe the Panthers have a good chance here.
And now moving into the NFC East, I got to give this one to the Giants. You're welcome, Zach Musso. I think Philly was in win-now mode, and they weren't able to get it done. I think we're going to see a rapid drop-off for them this coming season. They've got a lot of free agents that they're probably not going to be able to afford to bring back in next season. The Cowboys will Cowboys, and so I don't think they'll do much. Brian Dable's that guy. If there's anyone that you want coaching your team right now, it's Brian Dable. Coach of the year, incredible, incredible coach. He's that guy. He's just a big football guy. And I love him as a head coach. I love what he's doing with the Giants squad, and I think that's the Giants division.
I feel like this is the one that I'm going to have to disagree with you here. I feel like the Eagles are still going to be able to run away with this division, albeit it's going to be a little bit tougher. I mean, the Giants are on the come up, but I do believe they're still a couple pieces away, and I do believe the Eagles are going to be fine. I feel like there's a lot of hateful media that's going at them right now after the Super Bowl loss. And I mean, yeah, they are losing some pieces, but I still believe that they're going to be able to make a run and potentially make a 1 or 2 seed in the NFC. I do believe so.
All right, I'll believe it. We can agree to disagree. And lastly, we have the NFC West. I think this is still the Niners division. I think they are bringing back in a lot of pieces. They have arguably too many quarterbacks. They're trying to figure out who's going to be that guy. I still think this is Trey Lance's team when he's healthy. I think that's their vision as well. But they have proved that they have depth at that position should they need it at one of the most valuable positions in the league. I think we're getting a time warning from the control room. And so I think the 49ers still have a firm grasp on this. The Cardinals, they're going to be missing Kyler Murray for a majority of the season. The Rams are still trying to bring back whatever they can, but they're not going to do much. And I think Geno Smith is going to right back this season. So I think this is the 49ers division.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that team is just solid top to bottom, and there's just not a lot of holes in that team. Quarterback may be one of them, but I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see in the offseason of that quarterback competition.
Absolutely. And now we're going to transition into the NBA. The NBA is heading into the All-Star break at the end of this week. Now, coming out of the All-Star break is really when that playoff picture starts to really form, and we start to see what teams are going to make it, what teams are on the cusp, and what teams are down and out. So let's talk a little bit about what our expectations are for the NBA, both the East and the West, coming out of the All-Star break. I'll toss things over to you first to kind of what you're hoping to see, what you expect to see, the obvious, the Trojan horses perhaps that are maybe we could see them on the rise that we're not really talking about them. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just right off the bat, the Celtics, I feel like that should be a no-brainer. I feel like they're going to at least be a 1 or 2 seed in the East. They're the deepest team in the NBA right now. They're absolutely stacked top to bottom. That starting lineup and that bench squad is not that bad. And they were able to take a starting lineup Bucks to overtime with a like gutted off starting lineup here. Like it's basically all bench pieces and a little bit of role players. And that brings me to my next point. The Bucks as well. They're one of the top dogs in the East. I feel like that's a no-brainer here. Giannis Antetokounmpo has been the best player in the NBA thus far. I mean, like, how could you hate that team? It's like they're just very, very good on offense, very, very good on defense as well. You got guys like Drew Holiday, who hasn't made an All-Star game in 10 years, and he's playing like he was back in his early All-Star days. I mean, like, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Celtics hater. I'm biased. Can't stand the Celtics. Never will be able to stand the Celtics. The Bucks are only a game back on them, and they're going to stay neck and neck through the end of this race to the end. But I'm more concerned about kind of the middle teams. I think that's where the really neck and neck happens. You have teams like Miami, you have teams like Brooklyn, you have teams like the Knicks. They're all very, very close to the Atlanta. They're all very, very, very close. And with the adding of the play-in, which I believe this is the third year with the play-in tournament, it makes things a little bit interesting. I don't see any of these teams, if they're a play-in team, then making an NBA Finals run. It doesn't seem like that's possible in today's playoff picture. But I think that middle ground is very, very interesting, that you might get a 4 or 5 seed that is kind of lower on that. They might be 6-7 games back from Boston or Milwaukee, but they're able to come in at that 5 seed and they can do some damage in once they get into the postseason. So I think watching that little bit of the middle ground, no one's going to catch Milwaukee or Boston, but that middle ground is very, very interesting to me to see where those teams stack up and where they get into that playoff picture.
Yeah, I mean, like, one of those teams that I really want to point out here is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, like, I believe they're sitting at the 5th seed right now, and I mean, they've been fantastic. Like, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league right now with, like, Jared Allen holding down the paint there, and then Donovan Mitchell as well has been an absolute storm on offense. I mean, I believe he's had 6 40-point games thus far in his inaugural Cleveland season, and he's only had 5 in his total, like, 3 or 4 years in Utah as well. So, I mean, like, this guy's been a firecracker right now. And, I mean, yeah, I may not be the biggest Philly fan, but I do believe that they're in the mix there as well. I believe they're the 4th seed right now, or the 3rd. I can't remember. But, I mean, they're very solid as well. It's like they're definitely going to be a contending team for years to come.
Yeah, and now moving into the West, very similar to what I was saying about those kind of middle teams. The front runner obviously is Denver. They're miles and miles ahead on the records, ahead of any other team. But that middle ground, I think between the 3 and the 7 seed is a total of 2 games. So everywhere is all over the place in that middle ground of the Western Conference. You got teams like Sacramento, like Phoenix, like the Dallas Mavericks, especially with the acquisition of Kyrie, and Memphis as well. They're all very, very close to each other, and they're going to be playing some leapfrog through the end push of this season, which will make the playoff picture very, very interesting in the West as well. I think it's very, very competitive in the West.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's really hard to say what's going to come of the West right now just because of how close each team is right now. One of the teams that I like to see potentially make that push is the Dallas Mavericks. I may not be the biggest fan of Kyrie, but I do believe that him and Luka can at least put together some games, maybe get like a 4th or a 5th seed, maybe make some noise in the playoffs. And another one that I'd like to point out, I want to see the Kings in the playoffs. I feel like they'd be those playoff darlings that everyone's rooting for. I mean, like, they may not win that first round, or hey, maybe they win that first round and get bounced in the second, but I mean, like, it would just bring a lot of revitalization to the Sacramento area, and I believe that they have one of the best fan bases in the NBA right now. There's been clips, like Light the Beam and everything. Like, that would be awesome to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, definitely. And I want to talk about Dallas specifically for a second, because when they traded for Kyrie, the big talk was, that last shot, buzzer beater to win the game. Whose hands do you put the ball in? And anyone would tell you that that's got to be Luka, right? Kyrie's still a great ball player who's going to be able to make that shot for any team, but that's still Luka's team. But we saw that on display a few days ago as they needed that 3-point buzzer beater 3 to win them the game, and they just passed the ball back and forth because neither one of them wanted to be selfish to take the shot. And so I think there needs to be some sort of power dynamic to make that chemistry work if they want to be able to make that deep push.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you on that. I mean, like, and it was also a little bit of Timberwolves playing great defense there, but I mean, like, when it comes down to it, they need to find that guy who's absolutely going to take that shot, and I'm leaning more towards Luka. I feel like that's his team, and it's been his team for a while. And yeah, I mean, Kyrie's a great shot maker, but like, when it comes down to it, I feel like Luka really needs to have the ball in his hands, like make some magic happen.
Yeah, and a team, by the way, that I think is going to fall off completely is the Pelicans. They were expecting to get Zion back. They're sitting at the 8th seed right now. They're 7 seed right now. They were looking decently well, but they announced that Zion's going to be out for a couple more weeks. He can't stay healthy. And so I think not having him is just going to continue to push that team further and further down in the standings. And I see it as possible that they don't even make the play-in. So
I don't know. I feel like I have to disagree with you on that, though. I feel like they will at least make the play-in. Like, yeah, Zion's an integral part of that offense and a little bit of defense, but like Brandon Ingram, like he's been on an absolute tear since coming back from injury. I believe he's had like 5 straight 25-point games and like shooting 50% from the field on every single one of those games. And CJ McCollum as well is a really underrated veteran that like doesn't really get a lot of the limelight ever since he got traded from Portland. So I mean, yeah, they may not be as like good as the upper echelon of the West, but I still feel like they're at least going to make like an 8th or a 7th seed, give or take.
Yeah, absolutely. MVP push. Who's your top 1, 2, maybe 3 right now for that MVP push?
Right now, I have Jokic at 1, Giannis at 2, and Tatum at 3. I mean, Jokic has just been unreal right now, and I don't care about like this whole voter fatigue thing. I feel like Jokic should absolutely be like a three-peat MVP guy. I mean, like he's averaging a near triple double as a center. Who has ever done that? Like that is just insane to me. And I mean, Giannis is Giannis. I mean, like he's gonna put up these kind of numbers. Like I believe that he should have also three-peated, but that's just me. Like he has 2 MVPs right now back to back, and I believe that he should have at least got one. But Jokic got that one instead. So I mean, but look, when it comes down to it, like Jason Tatum to me, he's been playing lights out right now. Yeah. You can shake your head all you want. Yeah. But I mean, Jason Tatum, I feel like he should at least be in that conversation. He's been leading Boston to the best record in the NBA right now, and he's been lighting up the league. I believe he's top 5 in scoring right now. And then I do believe that he is like the most valuable player on that team. And when it comes down to it, the narrative of MVP is the better teams, the players on the better teams have the better chance of getting it. And if the Celtics do end up finishing in the 1st seed in the East, I believe Tatum should at least, like, I believe that he should, I think he should get it. I think he should.
I'll agree with Giannis and Jokic. I think you can't have an MVP conversation without also including Embiid in that. I don't think that he has had the same caliber of a season that he's had in years past, but I still think he needs to be in that conversation. I can't get behind a Tatum MVP. I'm sorry, I just can't do it. But I'm with you there for the most part. But that is all the time we have for discussions. Stay tuned as we hop over to a little bit of Prove Your Point.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Prove Your Point. I am your newest host, Jimmy, and alongside me, we have some returning faces. We have Nick, we have Jacob, some sports encyclopedias, as some would like to say. But, you know, let's get things rolling. So we're going to start with the NFL in our first topic. The offseason has just happened, you know, with the Super Bowl ending, and Derek Carr of the Las Vegas Raiders was actually just cut because they couldn't find a trade partner. He's in the market right now. Some teams need quarterbacks. Guys, I want to hear what team should sign Derek Carr. Jacob, I'm going to start with you first.
Thank you, Jimmy. Appreciate it. So when we think about Derek Carr, we think, where should he go? Where could he be? In my opinion, when I think about a team that would be great for Derek Carr, I think immediately of the Carolina Panthers, and I'm going to tell you why. Carolina is in an awful division. We know from watching last year that the NFC South was a brutal division. The Bucs won, winning only 8 games, and Carolina was right behind them, winning 7. They sort of stormed back after they fired Matt Rule and put Steve Wilkes in as the interim coach. And I think that getting Frank Reich as their new head coach, who is a quarterback savant, we saw what he did with Andrew Luck, even Carson Wentz. Everyone's like, oh yeah, Carson Wentz. Well, Carson Wentz was good last year. Contrary to popular belief, when he was in Indianapolis, he put up good numbers. Philip Rivers, remember Philip Rivers the last year of his career, even Jacoby Brissett to a certain point. And I just think that the Panthers, they already have an excellent defense with Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin, J.C. Horn. And I also get worried about some of the teams maybe into him. People have mentioned New Orleans. Well, how are they going to sign him when they're $55 million over the cap? How are they going to get the money to get him, for crying out loud? And to me, I think that Carolina is a place that Derek Carr would go. I think he'd flourish. DJ Moore would finally get a quarterback that is good. You know, he's been with so many quarterbacks that have stunk. This would be a quarterback that's legit and would really, I think, help elevate his game. We saw what they did in the run game with Deontay Foreman and Chuba Hubbard. And I think if you put Derek Carr on that team in that division, they're not that far off. They don't have to win a lot of games. If they win 9 games, they can probably win that division. And I think Derek Carr is capable of winning 9 games, which is why I think he should sign with the Carolina Panthers.
All right, Jacob, I really do like it. I mean, the NFC South with Brady leaving, the Bucks kind of going into poverty now. The NFC South is kind of wide open right now, and the Panthers have been building a pretty solid foundation. However, Nick, I want to hear what you have to say.
Well, ironically enough, I'm also picking a team from the NFC South, and I'm going with the New Orleans Saints. Last season, they went 7-10, with Andy Dalton being their primary quarterback. And with that being said, they're a quarterback away, and Derek Carr is a much better quarterback than Andy Dalton, who can improve that team significantly. Once again, going to one of the worst divisions in football, going into next season, based off of this season, their schedule is the second easiest in football. They also have a top 10 defense and one of the best defenses at defending the pass. They also have a good running back in Alvin Kamara, and they also have a good upcoming wide receiver in Chris Olave, and who knows what else they're going to be able to add in the offseason, as they do have a bunch of cap space. And I think this is going to be a good opportunity for Derek Carr to get a home playoff game and possibly win a home playoff game, sending the Saints to the Super Bowl next season.
All right, Nick, I'm sticking in the NFC South as well. It is a very wide open division. However, I'm going to give this one to Jacob. I think Derek Carr would fit much better in the Panthers system. They're bringing in all these new coaches. As you said, Frank Reich is a quarterback savant. So I believe that Derek Carr could at least elevate this offense. I'm a big fan of DJ Moore. I think he's heavily underrated. So I think adding like a solid quarterback into that system could hopefully elevate them and possibly make the playoffs. All right, moving on with our next topic, we're going to be swinging things over to the NBA. Again, the trade deadline actually was just up about last week, and Russell Westbrook was moved from the Lakers to the Utah Jazz. Pending potential buyouts, he could be on the buyout market right now, and teams need a solid point guard to make a playoff push. Nick, what do you got to say for that?
Mr. Triple-Double, a guy who can fill the stat sheet, but unfortunately, I think he's going to be staying home. Russell Westbrook is in one of the toughest situations that we've seen an athlete similar to him, Allen Iverson, where, yeah, he's a great player, but he's in the decline of his career, and he just can't help a team win. He can't go to a bad team because it's not going to be good for him to play with young players. It's going to hinder their development, and I'm not sure how much he can help a great team put them over the top to win a championship. And he is below average from all shooting metrics, whether it be at the rim, mid-range, free throw line. And when it comes to three-point shooting, out of 150 qualified three-point shooters, he's 149th. And Paolo Banchero is the one behind him. According to per 36-minute stats, Russell Westbrook is first in turnovers. And for whatever reason, he just has really bad hands when it comes to handling the basketball. And 3, 4, maybe even 5 times a game when you watch him play, it just makes you scratch your head and wonder, bruh, what are you doing? I really think Russell Westbrook is in a very tough situation. I'm not sure how much he can add to a good team and put them over the top. And unfortunately, I think Russ's bad outweighs his good.
Nick, I feel like you make a great point there. Staying in Utah, at least he'll get some minutes compared to where he was with the Lakers. And who knows, maybe the Jazz could potentially make like that play-in. However, I want to hear what Jacob has to say about this.
Yeah, well, I thought Nick made some good points, and he gave you a lot of stats, and they were all well thought out. But I firmly believe that if I'm Russell Westbrook and I think of teams that I'd want to go to, the team that comes to mind is the Chicago Bulls, and here's why. The Chicago Bulls are a team that has certainly underachieved this year. They had a very solid season last year. They have not been able to replicate it this year. They just have not been, they just haven't been as good, plain and simple. They're currently 11th in the East. They're a spot out of the play-in tournament. And what's the thing that they're lacking the most? It's a true point guard. They've missed Lonzo Ball the entire season. He's been out the whole year. No one really knows when he's coming back. And they don't really have a true point guard that has been able to back him up. And their leading assist man per game is DeMar DeRozan with like 5.4. Westbrook is averaging like at least 7 assists. And to me, if I'm Chicago, I want a point guard on the team that can really, ignite my offense. He's going to be someone that's going to be motivated with a lot to prove because of how bad it kind of went for him in LA. And I think that if I'm Chicago and Westbrook's available, you have nothing to lose. They didn't sell at the deadline. A lot of people thought, hey, maybe they'll move LaVine, they'll move DeRozan. They stood pat. And that means that I still think that they think that they have a shot and making the playoffs. And I think that if you get Westbrook in that team, he doesn't have to be the main guy. He can pass it. He can, do things. He can be a playmaker. And if I'm him, I think that he's also a guy that would want to be in a big market like Chicago. And I think that he could potentially put them in that last spot in the plan. And if I'm the Bulls and I'm Russell Westbrook, I would try and figure it out. And if I'm Westbrook, I would try and get to Chicago.
Jacob, I feel like that is a very good point because the Bulls are kind of slumping right now, and I feel like they need some energy on that offensive side, and he could bring some good defensive potential. However, I'm going to give this one to Nick. I feel like all the statistics that you brought up about how Westbrook is kind of in a decline, I feel like not a lot of teams really need like a guy like him to kind of use up a lot of minutes. And in Utah, he'll get some minutes at least, and we'll see what happens. All right, our final debate topic for the night. We're going to stick in the NBA. Who is the new NBA favorite after the trade deadline? Jacob, we're going to start with you.
Yeah. So as we all know, during the trade deadline, the Phoenix Suns got Kevin Durant, who is one of the best players in the NBA. And everyone's saying, oh, well, they got Kevin Durant, so now they're obviously the favorites to win the whole thing. Wrong. They are not the favorites to win the whole thing. And I know they have Kevin Durant. I know they have Devin Booker. And I know they have DeAndre Ayton. But you know who they also have? Chris Paul. And you know what Chris Paul does in the playoffs? He chokes. Over and over and over again. If you haven't seen it, go back, watch the tape. Don't forget about how bad he was against Dallas when he basically just fell apart in the last 3 games and they did nothing. Chris Paul is not someone that you can rely on in the playoffs. He will always fall and crumble in the big game. And I don't care how good Kevin Durant is. I just don't think that Phoenix has that kind of championship DNA to win the whole thing. However, the team that I do still love coming out of the West and to win the whole thing is the Denver Nuggets. And I'm going to tell you why. Nikola Jokic, we all know how great he is. He's amazing. He's a back-to-back MVP, and he's having another stellar season. He can do it all. He can score. He can pass. He can rebound. He's one of the best passers in the league, and he's a center for crying out loud. I don't think people realize how amazing that is. And apart from Jokic, they have a really good roster. They have Jamal Murray, who's finally coming back to form and seems like he's starting to show signs of being his old self. They have Aaron Gordon, who is having a career year, averaging 17 a game, shooting 58.7% from the field and nearly 40% from the three-point line. Probably should have been an all-star in my opinion. And the additions of guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who's also having another great year, playing defense and being a really solid shooter, incredibly efficient. And Bruce Brown, who they signed from the Nets, who's been a very good glue guy coming off the bench. I just think that Denver, everything is clicking for them. It just seems like it's their year and everything is just clicking on all cylinders. And I don't think that they're going to be stopped. I think if they have home court, with that altitude in Denver, I think that they can take great advantage of it. And I think that they're going to be a tough out at home, on the road. I don't care where they're playing. I really love Denver. And I don't think that anyone's beating them this year. And yeah, they're my team to win the whole thing.
A lot of Chris Paul hate here, Jacob. I don't know what he did to you, but hey, man. Denver, though, they are the 1 seed in the West. I feel like it is a very good pick. But, Nick, I want to hear what you have to say.
Also, like Jacob, I don't trust the Phoenix Suns because they got CP0 rings. Also, like Jacob, my preseason pick to come out of the West was the Denver Nuggets. But the reason I don't have them winning it all is because they're mid-team defensively, and they also don't have a great defensive stopper when it comes to that 6'11" beast in Milwaukee, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and I am picking the Milwaukee Bucks to win it all. One of my first reasons is because they have the best player in the NBA, Giannis Antetokounmpo. But more importantly, they've finally been moderately healthy for these last 11 games. They haven't had Bobby Portis. But in these last 11 games with Chris Middleton, they have been the best offensive team in basketball. They've won 11 straight games. For the entire season, they've been the third best team defensively and also in the last 11 games. And when they get whole, when they're going to get Bobby Portis back, and when they finally add Jade Crowder to that lineup, they're going to be deadly. Not to mention, they have 3 all-defensive players in Jrue Holiday, Giannis, and a great rim protector in Brook Lopez. And they have a phenomenal bench, too, with Joe Ingles, where I was actually surprised on how well he was able to run the point guard position. They have a great role player in Grayson Allen, another great role player in Pat Connaughton, and I love some Javon Carter. And when it comes to the Bucks, not many teams in the league, I don't think any team in the league has the personnel to stop Giannis, even though a team like the Celtics or the Grizzlies will try and build that wall. But thankfully, Giannis has overcome that, because when he sees that double team come, he's just going to kick it out to a shooter. Hopefully, they're going to knock it down. And unlike the Nuggets, the Bucks are good on the road. The Nuggets are not. They have the second best home record in the league. They have the second best road record in the league. They have the second best record in the league, only a half a game behind the Celtics. And I think that that team has all the pieces to win it all.
Nick, you made a lot of great points here. I really do like Milwaukee a lot. You know, it hurts my heart being a Celtics fan, but Milwaukee is right on the Celtics trail right now. I could realistically see them overtaking them in the East. But Jacob, you know, the Denver Nuggets, like I said, safe pick. They are the 1 seed in the West, and they are very good on offense. But their defense is a little suspect, which is why I'm going to give it to Nick today, because I believe that the Milwaukee Bucks are a much better contender than the Denver Nuggets. Giannis Antetokounmpo has been one of, if not the best players in the NBA thus far, and that team is just very deep. Like, Chris Middleton is a killer. Bobby Portis is very solid. Drew Holiday, an all-star. You know, Nick, I want to hear some words. What do you got to say about your win today?
I mean, Jacob was a great competitor. He's right up there with me when it comes to NBA knowledge. He knows a lot more than I do about almost every other sport, but I've spent a lot of time studying this game, and I do think the Nuggets are going to be one of the biggest threats in the West, and especially to the Bucks. But I'm a big Giannis fan, and I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket with him. And plus, I want to see him get to that top 10 of all-time trajectory.
Jacob, you got anything to say?
Yeah, Nick was a worthy opponent. It was a pleasure battling it out with him. And, yeah, look, I did not come out on top, but I gave it my all. So, no regrets.
That you did, Jacob. That you did. But stick around, as our very own Rob is going to give you guys an update on Marist Athletics.
Hello and welcome again to another edition of the Red Fox Report, where we cover all things Marist sports, and let's get right into it. Men's and women's basketball are nearing the end of their seasons. Men's basketball plays just 5 more games before a MAC championship berth in early March. Women's basketball plays 5 more games, with their next one coming tomorrow as they play at Manhattan. Next week will also mark the final home game of Coach Brian Georges' career, as February 25th will see a retirement ceremony in his honor. Men's lacrosse got off to a bit of a shaky start, dropping their first 2 games to number 9 Rutgers and then hosting Binghamton. They look to right the ship as they travel to Duval County to take on number 15 Jacksonville. The women's team starts their season this Saturday, February the 18th, as they host the Bucknell Bison. Men's and women's swimming and diving finished off their season at the MAC Championships, where both teams saw a great success. The men's team finished second place, falling just behind Ryder, with multiple athletes bringing home gold. The women's team finished third place behind Niagara and Fairfield. 1 athlete won gold, with several others taking silver and bronze. Finally, men's and women's tennis have started off slow. The men's team has started 0-5 since their season has commenced, and they look to turn that around as they host the University of North Dakota Sunday the 26th. The women's team has started their season 2-2, with both wins being part of their current win streak. They look to continue that streak as they host Hofstra this Saturday. That's all we have for the Red Fox Report and for this episode of Halftime on the Hudson. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you next time.